Hey everybody, Coach Brandon here today with my lovely assistant Sammy, my wife. Today she's going to help me convey to you guys some important guard retention concepts, or one of them. We're going to focus on just one today, just one to make it nice and easy for you to remember. If you guys want to write this down to help you remember, that'd be a good thing. So I've rewritten this curriculum where we're going to take 2 months to study each chapter, and because of the quarantine, we're closed while we should be studying guard retention. Now, guard retention is an incredibly important topic of study that I don't want you guys to miss out on. So I'm going to try to shoot some videos for you guys while we're closed to cover the guard retention, which is what we would be learning in class right now if classes were in session. Since they're not, I'm going to convey this information to you guys so that when we come back to normal classes and we get going with either half guard or closed guard or wherever we happen to be in the schedule, you guys will hopefully be caught up to that point, okay? Hopefully you guys don't miss any important information. So, there are a lot of important concepts with guard retention. One of the biggest that we're going to focus on today is offensive and defensive cycles, okay? What does that mean? From a lot of jiu-jitsu positions, say the mount or side control, it's very easy to know if you're attacking or if you're defending. For instance, Sam, can you go on your back for me? Perfect. Come down this way a little bit. Okay, so if I'm in the mount, it's very obvious that I'm the attacker and Sammy's the defender. Okay, so we'd say she's in a defensive cycle, I'm in an offensive cycle. There are exceptions to this where maybe she's starting to get an elbow inside, she's starting to go into her escapes, or maybe, yes, exactly, she's starting to bring knees and elbows together, and so that she's, thank you very much, Sammy, so that she's taking a little bit more of the lead. But it's not as clear in open guard. The mount, again, very clear when one person's on top, one person's on bottom, one person's in a dominant position, the other's in an inferior position. Open guard, there's not really a dominant and inferior position, it's more or less neutral. Okay, so it's hard to know when you need to attack and when you need to be focusing on your defensive responsibilities. When are you looking to attack and off-bounce your opponent, or when you should be focused more on just making sure you don't get your guard passed. And we're going to talk about that next, offensive and defensive cycles. Let's first talk about different demarcation, or let's talk about what people need for a guard pass. Snake line your back. So I need generally 5 things to pass the guard as the passer. I need a working grip on my partner. Once I have a grip, I'm going to use that grip to help me get angle. Once I have angle, now I'm going to start to close the distance. Okay, so number 3 is close distance. Now I'm going to start to change levels, so I'm going to get down to where I can be chest to chest. Now the last piece that I need is to pin her head and shoulders for roughly 3 seconds, at least one shoulder. Okay, so those 5 steps again. Get a grip. This grip is going to help me do step number 2, get an angle. I can use these grips to move her and myself out of the way. Now I have a good angle on her, so I'm not right in front of her anymore. Now I need to start getting closer to her chest, so we need to start by closing the distance, number 3. Then once we've closed distance, we're going to change levels, getting down chest to chest. And then last one is to come in and pin her shoulders. Okay, so once more, grip, angle, close the distance, change the levels, pin the head and shoulders. So let's look at some demarcation lines here now. Okay, Sammy has 3 vertical lines, demarcation lines that help me judge angle. She's got a center line that goes right down the middle. We talk about that a lot. Okay. She also has side lines. She has a left side line and a right side line. Okay, so for instance, this would be my right side line, the line that joins my shoulder and my hip. And then I have a left side line, the line that joins my left shoulder and my left hip. Once I've gotten outside of one of Sammy's side lines, I now have angle on her. Same thing on the other side. So these vertical lines measure angle. Let's talk about the horizontal lines. We have a toe line, the line that joins her 2 toes. We have a knee line, the line that joins her two knees together. We have a hip line, the line that joins her hips. And we have a shoulder line, the line that joins her two shoulders. Those horizontal demarcation lines are an indication of distance. How close am I to Sammy's head and shoulders? Obviously at the toe line, I'm very far away. I want to progress all the way, initially up to the hip line. I want to come into and control the pocket of the hip. Once I'm up to the hip line, things are greatly in favor of the passer, okay? So now that we understand toe line, knee line, hip line, shoulder line, and center line, left side line, and right side line, let's see how we can use those to help us judge when it's time to be offensive and when it's time to be defensive. Okay? Sam, can you stand up? So now, I'm in an open guard position. I can be offensive when I've made 4 points of connection to my opponent, where all 4 limbs are connected in some meaningful way, okay? For instance, my left hand has the cuff, my right hand has the cross collar, my left foot is on the hip, and my right foot's on the bicep. This controls where her hand can go. The right hand controls the posture. This helps me keep her head lower than her hips. My left foot governs distance. If Sammy were to try to walk closer to me right now, she can't because of my left foot in the hip. And my right hand, or I'm sorry, my right foot controls the inside position on the bicep. I'll do this on the other side. So if she tries to get her right arm around my foot, I can follow, and it's very hard for her to use that arm. Now from this collar sleeve guard, it's very easy for me to start going into my attacks. So if I have 4 points of connection to Sammy, and now Sammy tries to get outside my sideline and get an angle by circling, these 4 points of connection keep me locked in with her, so I rotate with her. As opposed to if I didn't have 4 points of connection, and Sammy does the same thing, now she's getting to a really good angle, and now this is going to be bad for me. Perfect, thank you. So, a note for you. When you have 4 points of connection to your partner, you are in an offensive cycle. It is time for you to off-balance your opponent and go on the attack. What about defensive? When am I in a defensive cycle? As a general word of advice to especially beginners, I recommend you're in a defensive cycle when you don't have 4 points of connection. Even if I'm here, if Sammy doesn't have grips at all, stay right there, and I'm here, I would consider this to be a defensive cycle for me, because she can move so much faster than I can. So rather than looking to try to extend limbs and go into attacks, where now she could pass my guard and there's chest exposure, I'm going to stay tight until Sammy tries to come in and get grips and surrenders grips to me. Now I'm back in the offensive cycle, and it's time for me to start off-balancing Sammy, forcing her to put hands on the mat so I can go in my attacks. Now, the better you get, the more experience you get, you can start to try to go into offensive cycles right from here. You can. The better you get, the more you can bend these rules. However, regardless of how you get, of how good you get, you are going to be in a 100% defensive cycle when your opponent encroaches upon the pocket of your hip, upon the intersection of your sideline, so they've got an angle, and your hip line, so they've begun to close the distance. When your opponent gets an angle by getting outside your sideline, and they start to close the distance by encroaching on your hip line, you are in a 100% defensive cycle, okay? For instance, if Sammy were to take grips on my knees and she tries to do a Toriando or a bullfighter pass where she goes to one side and she starts to encroach on this hip, I'm 100% defensive here. There is no offensive attack that you should be trying to go for. At this point, you're going to be 100% defensive by framing and by bringing legs back inside. We're going to talk more about framing in the future, in a future lesson. Framing is an incredibly important topic that's going to get a video all on its own. But for now, understand that as your opponent encroaches, maybe she goes for a cross knee pass or knee cut, where she starts to go over my leg. Yes, right here, she starts to come through, maybe connecting hands here. This is another situation where she's encroaching on that intersection of hip line and sideline. John Donner calls this the jeopardy point, or the point of danger, okay? When she gets to the jeopardy point, or that intersection of sideline and hip line, you are 100% defensive. I'm not thinking about triangles, I'm not thinking about arm bars, I'm only thinking about framing and recovering my guard. So in an instance like this, I might take a collar grip here, forcing her back and away, and then once again, trying to set up my grips to go into an offensive cycle. Okay? Now, if I'm here, she starts, like, let's say I have, maybe 2 points of connection. Certainly not good. Maybe 3, okay? Am I in an offensive cycle here? Well, it could be, okay? There's 3 points of connection, so certainly it's better than 2 and not as good as 4. From here, it's usually pretty easy for me to make a 4th connection, and these 3 points of connection do a pretty good job of holding the ankle. If Sammy circles with me from this point, these points of connection anchor me to her. But of course, a 4th point of connection is always a good thing here. If I can use my right leg in some meaningful way to connect, then obviously things are looking even better than they were before. Okay? So, as general advice, especially for you newer grapplers, you are going to want to create and maintain 4 points of connection. You can use those 4 points of connection to off-balance your opponent and then execute either a sweep or a submission. If you have 4 points of connection, you are in an offensive cycle and you should be taking some initiative to off-balance your opponent and attack them. However, if your training partner or opponent has begun to encroach on that jeopardy point, they've started to get an angle getting out of the sideline, they've started to close the distance getting up to the hip line, and they're encroaching on the jeopardy point, you are 100% defensive. Stop attacking, stop looking for arm bars, start framing, and bringing your legs, your knees, and your feet back to the inside position. So that's your big concept today, that's your big takeaway. Understand that in guard retention, there are cycles of offense and cycles of defense. It's your job to know when you should be attacking and when you should be defending. And by using these demarcation lines, you should get a pretty good idea. Thanks for watching, guys.